Hey you, I'm Ali Amo, and this is the A Lease on Life podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Lisa Parker from Trilome, a company she founded that utilizes a new modality that Lisa created, which balances the mind, body, and soul using psychedelic integrative bodywork. So in the Web of Life philosophy, now we're exploring heavily the science and energy strand, the power strand. But obviously, because of the kind of work that she does, it brings in all of the other 6 fundamental elements. Please join me in welcoming Lisa. How are you today?
Ali, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
This is the longest time it's ever taken to get a podcast recorded. We've known each other for quite a while now, haven't we? At least 6 months. We can't actually pinpoint the time. But it's just been a
It's
while.
been a lot. A whole lot of life has happened since we first met.
Absolutely. And I've been dying to do this episode because I'm not sure about our listeners, but this is an area of exploration that has shown a lot of promise in all of science and academia. They're now exploring the use of psychedelics to treat some severe issues with mental illness and mental health, emotional health and well-being. So I am just fascinated by it. And to get a live one, I am over the moon. So well, I'm curious to know what got you into this. I'm always interested in this from an outsider's perspective, but you were interested in this from the insider's perspective. So tell me.
Yeah, this journey started for me back in 2016. And it wasn't because I was jumping on the bandwagon of psychedelics. Actually, I come from a very strong conservative Christian religious background, and I was a competitive athlete.
Oh,
So
wow.
psychedelics and drugs were going to ruin my career, ruin my body, ruin my brain, shame my family, and send me straight to hell.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was terrified, to be sure. I stayed far away from any mind altering substances for a lot of my life. But what got me finally to it was actually, to make a long story short, it was avoidance.
Yeah.
I finally got to the point. I have a lot of trauma in my life, and some of it is violent, and I have a whole story around all of it. And I was so terrified to talk to anyone or to reach out because of the religious shame portion of it, because why
It's
didn't
very
God
much what
protect me?
happens. Oh, okay. That way. I thought you meant the family pressure, like what stays behind closed doors kind of thing, or the don't talk about your family, all of that sort of
All of it,
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
all of it, all of it, all of it. You don't talk about it. You don't get help. It's a spiritual issue. But I was really confused because I was a people pleaser. I was a rule follower. I did everything I could, and I was still getting into trouble. And so for me and my religious programming, it was because, it was my spiritual fault. It wasn't
Oh, like you're
just
being
natural human.
punished. That's sort of the
Not,
perspective you mean, or?
yeah, not really punished. I mean, because I was trying to follow I was such a rule follower.
Hmm.
But it just wasn't, in that religious context, you just don't talk about anything. And if something is wrong, it's because, it's your fault. Like, what sin haven't you confessed? Or what aren't you doing? Or what are you hiding from God? Or, there
Okay.
in my upbringing and in my religious culture, it was my responsibility. It wasn't just, oh, protect yourself and have street smarts and stand up for yourself, because anger is a sin. All of those
Mm.
emotions around, you know, um,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know how else to say it other than anger, or standing up for yourself, or confrontation, or God forbid, there's conflict.
Yeah.
Like none of that is allowed or was allowed in my religious culture. So I just didn't understand how to navigate safety and boundaries in my life. And that obviously got me in a lot of trouble.
Well, not to
It
mention, I've just released a series of things. My last episode was about the conflict cycle. and how
Mm.
we learn a lot from when we were young in the home, and a lot of the cycles that we create within ourselves, despite what's been inflicted upon us, what we learn from that. So the people pleasing in that, I'm hearing this and thinking, all right, so you were one who believed that speaking up causes problems, so you avoid it like the plague, avoid confrontation, um, which means you're not expressing yourself. You're not really allowed to have a voice, and you're fearful of what would happen if you did, which kind of aligns with all the people pleasing stuff. So I understand exactly what you did and why, as I'm sure you do now. And I'm curious to know, when at what point did you make a decision that you wanted to step outside that box?
Yeah. So everything you just said, 1,000%. And I should also mention that I started to disassociate from the time I was 7 years old.
Oh, okay.
So my
Yeah.
nervous system was so sensitive that
Mm.
even if I wanted to, I couldn't talk about things because I would just, I would just disassociate. And so what
Yeah.
happened is I got to a moment in my mid 30s where I realized that I needed therapy. And it's the first time that it occurred to me that I needed help because everything that had happened to me, I never told anybody and I never talked to anybody. My friends didn't know, my family didn't know. No one knew except for me and my abusers. Like no one, and I never, and because my nervous system, like I couldn't imagine talking to someone about something that was so sensitive because my nervous system would just, you
Yeah.
know, it just wasn't possible.
Am I right
So
to assume that the abusers were in the family or family friend, somebody close to? No? Oh, wow.
no,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
thankfully I have to say I have an amazing family. I love my parents are protective and beautiful and supportive. Um, Thankfully I can say that actually, and oddly enough, nothing happened in the church and nothing happened in my family. It was all external
Outside. Wow.
circumstances. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what
So I don't
religion
have
were you brought up in?
Christian, Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist. I don't think I've heard that one before. Okay, but it's a Christian
Yeah, it's
denomination. Okay.
Southern American, Bible Belt,
Okay.
if you know those terms. Yeah,
So
but Christian.
what state did you grow up in?
We moved around a lot. I was born in New Mexico. I did most of my growing up in Detroit, Michigan, but
Okay.
I lived in 10 different states. I mean, we've moved quite a bit throughout my upbringing and
That's a bit
throughout my adult
unsettling
life.
within itself. Mm.
Yeah, a healthy dose of, because of family and schooling and profession when I got into the corporate world. And then a little bit of just because I can, you know. We were raised,
Understandably.
yeah. We're very nomadic. We collect a lot of addresses, as we say. Um,
And a lot of
we
life
just
experience.
and that.
And the other
So
thing I was curious about with, sorry to interrupt, but what kind of Olympic, like athlete, what was your area? Were you a track person or what was your thing?
Oh yeah, we've not met each other. I'm very tall. I'm 6 feet tall.
I can tell you're tall
So
because even sitting down, you're taking up more of the screen. So I'm like, all right, yep.
basketball and volleyball, but volleyball is what I played
Oh,
all the way through
wow.
university. Yeah.
Okay. And in America, the whole university thing, they're very big on the sports. So that the culture behind that as well. Okay. So you would have
Oh,
also felt a need to leave the athlete on the field or the court and keep your private life very separate, keep together that whole, yeah,
oh my goodness.
the
I went
pressure.
to university. I was there as an athlete. I wasn't there for education, and I certainly wasn't there to, you know, learn about the world and figure out a career. My job was an athlete. It was a little bit of an adjustment once I graduated, going, oh, now I'm in the real world and I'm not an athlete anymore. It was a little
Mhm.
bit jarring. So
Would have been.
y- yeah, the university was, yeah, it's funny. I was just telling that story the other day. I'm like, I really envy, the young students that are in university that are learning and curious about the world and going into it, because I just did not have that experience at all. I
Wasn't
wasn't there
meant
for
to be your
education.
experience. Yeah, I can understand
No,
that.
I mean, I had a very different education that makes me very good at what I do now,
Mm,
just not
life.
in the,
School of hard knocks.
yeah. So yeah, we could say. Um, so a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse through all of those years, and went into the corporate world, and I was miserable and I was feeling it in my body, and like it was showing up in different parts of my body, and I was having so much pain and no one could figure out why. Of course,
Mm,
it wasn't
mm,
physiological, but I was disassociated. I didn't know anything.
mm,
And I went to a body worker and had a profound experience with her. And she started to show me the connection between what my physical body was holding and feeling and my life experiences, even though she didn't know, because again, I didn't tell anyone anything.
mm,
And it was the first time that I started to make the connection of like, oh, my physical body is holding on to all of my trauma.
mm.
And the lights went on for the first time. And I was in my mid 30s going, I think I need to go to therapy. And like it had never occurred to me before. But I'm an introvert. I'm a very
Okay.
strong introvert. And with all of the um athlete programming and the religious programming, going to sit in front of a stranger like another human and divulging my deepest, darkest tender, like I will sit in silence for an hour, no problem. Like there's no way I'm going to talk to a stranger about my life experiences. I've never told anyone, no one knows. Like it's just not gonna happen.
Mm.
And my sister-in-law actually told me about ayahuasca.
Ah.
And I'm sure, I am quite certain, because I know this woman and I love her. I know she told me the breadth of what it was, but I promise you the only thing that I heard was it's 20 years of therapy in one night and you
Mm.
don't talk to a soul. And I go, great. I would rather go drink a plant and not talk to anyone and get 20 years of therapy than go to traditional therapy. And so, honestly, my first ayahuasca experience was avoidance because I didn't want to talk to anyone about it.
Mm. That would have shown up in the session too, right? Like it would have
Totally.
manifested. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
dying
Yeah.
to know how that went because I've heard some amazing stories. It's always something I'm like, I'd love to try that. I'm scared to try that, but I'd love to try that, but I'm scared to try that. Like, yeah.
Uh,
So run us through it. How was it?
oh, she drastically, drastically changed my life. She saved my life, actually.
Mm,
It's probably good that I didn't understand what the experience was going to be like, because I think my nervous
mm,
system probably would not have let me go do something that intense. But the fact that I didn't know kind of allowed me to surrender into the experience. And I mean, there's an intelligence to these medicines. We don't go straight to the trauma. Like it's a very beautiful, like laying the groundwork. Like there's an intentional flow to like how healing happens.
mm-hmm.
And in that first session, my experience with her is she showed me that I was playing hide and go seek. Like
With yourself?
I've been hiding my whole life because I've been so
Mm,
traumatized.
mm,
But my trauma ended years ago, decades ago, but I was still hiding. And she was calling me out, like, it's okay for you to come out because your future, like you've been walking backwards through your life, looking at your past. And she was like, we need to do some forgiveness and healing around that, but turn around because your future is forward. And
okay.
that small little shift in my perspective woke me up. Oh, I've been hiding. Oh, I have a future. Oh, my past doesn't dictate my future. And that small session just radically changed everything. And I knew I mean, again, we didn't even touch my trauma. Like I knew that this was something so profound that I had to, like, once I got a glimpse of, oh, healing is possible. Oh, I can be a human. Oh, I can be safe and walk through this world. I couldn't get enough. And so I sat with her as much as I could throughout the years. Um, Went and did 2 back-to-back dietas in Peru with the medicine.
So the
That
first time you did it, what was the environment and the circumstances? Was it in the US? Was it overseas? What was the go?
No, it was in California. So a good friend of mine, there's a rich culture here in California. A lot of these sacred medicines are very openly welcomed. And so a
Mm,
lot of people invite indigenous leaders to come, like as a
facilitator, yeah,
yeah, like as
and
a just
guide
as
you
an
through
image,
it.
yeah, as an invitation. And the reason why I did that one was because it was an indigenous leader who it was a small private group. So there was probably 8 of us in the house with an indigenous Peruvian shaman. And I knew almost everybody, if not everybody in that group. So I felt safe. And I was with my
Mm,
sister-in-law, and
okay,
like I couldn't be safer. Like no one's gonna touch me if she's next to me. So I
yeah.
felt safe, and it was a small group. So that was my initiation, and then I got introduced to other people who serve the medicine, other indigenous leaders. Um, and I started to find my way through. I mean, there was groups, or there were 60 plus people, and it was way too much and like too chaotic. And then there were, certain curanderas who were doing like just women's group of
Okay.
like 8 or less. So I started to get curious and navigate through that environment, what's available here in the States. Um, Before I got invited to actually go into the Amazon and Peru with certain tribes and kind of deepen my studies there. But that was my start.
So for the people playing at home, can you explain what ayahuasca is, how you take
Mm,
it?
yes, I love these conversations. So when people say ayahuasca, traditionally what they're referring to is there's a vine that grows in the Amazon, and it's also in Hawaii and other places, but it's been transported. But that's a different conversation. But there's a vine that's called Banisterius capi, and that is the spiritual essence of ayahuasca. But on her own, she is not psychedelic. Her spiritual properties open when she's mixed with either DMT or a plant called chacruna. And DMT is very disassociative. Those two, chacruna and the Banisterius capi vine together, is what typically people refer to as ayahuasca. And it's a brew that you take, 8 to 12 hour, very disassociative, very intense, typically purgative type of experience that you would have to do or should do. Not should, I don't like that word, but typically with an indigenous leader who knows that medicine, just because of the intensity of the experience.
They know how to support you and navigate through the process because there's a tendency, am I wrong, to be a little bit uh possibly sick at the start, like as your body adjusts to what you've consumed?
Yeah, it's very purgative. So your body will eliminate what it can't either digest, because that traditional brew is very fibrous because it's a bark, and depending on how well they grind it, you can get very fibrous, barky material that your body can't necessarily digest. Um, on top of that, of course, there's the spiritual and energetic, purge. But, first of all, if your body can't digest that fibrous bark, it's obviously going to eliminate it. It also works on the gut biome. So you can eat a purge, you purge in either direction, so it can clean you out either way. So it's
I've
purgative
heard
on that.
stories where it was simultaneous, like at the both
And
time,
and
no,
it
same
can.
time, both sides. Yeah, yeah.
And it can. And in this scope of work, we call it getting well. because it's very
Mm.
different. Like getting sick is because you have a bacteria or something that's, unhealthy versus you're purging something that doesn't serve you. And so by purging it, you're getting well.
Mm.
So we reframe it a little bit differently in the ayahuasca realm. Um, but they call her the grandmother because there is no hierarchy when it comes to psychedelic medicines. But if there were, she's the grandmother. I mean, she's the teacher's teacher. She's the master's master. She's one of the oldest known, aside from psilocybin. She's one of the oldest teachers. I mean, if you think about, and I have so many stories that I can tell you of things that I've heard that have been passed down, but the tribes in the Amazon don't have technology. Traditionally, they didn't have technology. Some of them do now. They got their information through these medicines.
Mm.
So the leaders would drink the medicine, they would download like how to support, how to grow, how to lead their people. Um, they got their intelligence, from this medicine. She's the grandmother. So I tell my clients, think about sitting in front of like a gray-haired leader, elder, because I don't always use grandmother because everyone nowadays have different associations with grandmothers.
Mm.
Um, so I tend to not use that, but elder. And that she's going to sit down with you and go, Allie, I have some things to tell you. And some things are going to be delightful. You are loved. You have a purpose. You're okay. You're safe. You're delightful. Those things are easy to hear. And sometimes things are a little bit more challenging to hear, like change your story, let go of your resentment, take responsibility. This is on you. And our ego doesn't like to hear those messages, but essentially that it's coming from a place of absolute love and compassion and for your highest good. Um,
I have a
so
question just for my own. I understand from all the stories that I've heard over the years from different people, and some of them are celebrities and things that, had to face some things. But what I'm curious about is how the information comes through, because isn't it like visions that you get, or little, I don't know, like little snippets of experience? Sometimes it's a bit of flashback. Sometimes you not relive, you actually see yourself going through your greatest fear to learn the lesson that you were missing in having that as a fear and all of that. So can you give us even if you got an example or something to illustrate what that experience is like? Because psychedelic
Mhm.
works with the mind. So it's not
Mhm.
like you're just hearing sentences um, to give you the insight just plain as day. It's a realization that you come to from I don't know if you'd call it a visioned, like a, or yeah, I'll let you cook with that.
Yes.
You're in the
Yeah.
kitchen,
So
go.
yeah, let's talk about brain function for a moment. The biggest one is the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is our command center. This is where all of our cognitive learning and all of our filters um, operate from. So we filter information 1,000 times a second, based on our environment around what's okay, not okay, safe, unsafe, appropriate, inappropriate, good, bad, da 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 da. And we go through life and we have experiences, and sometimes we have an experience and we learn a quote unquote truth that may not actually be based in our truth. So for me, for example, I was bullied, severely bullied in school. I learned the truth that I'm not enough and it's not okay to be authentic. That in order to be safe, I have to be someone else. And in
Mm.
those like really sensitive cognitive moments, like you secure that lesson in your brain as a truth.
Yeah,
But it's
that
just a
belief.
learned,
Mm.
yeah, but it's not actually in alignment with my truth and my higher self. These medicines soften the function of that frontal lobe. So suddenly you're receiving information and you're processing information from a different perspective. So imagine that I take that, like, this is my known truth and I'm not enough. And I take ayahuasca and suddenly that part of my brain softens a little bit. Then as I start to process my life experiences, I'm not processing it through the information about I'm not enough. I'm starting to see it from my higher self truth perspective.
So it shifts the lens with which you view whatever you experience in that moment. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
you
you can
actually see the
see,
universal truth inside of it, not the learned truth and the beliefs that you've accumulated over your lifetime. Okay.
yeah, because learned belief systems are very different than our aligned truth systems. And then if you add the DMT aspect to it, so DMT is a very disassociative, so it separates conscious
Consciousness?
consciousness.
Yeah.
I just had dental work, and so my speech is a little off.
No, you're right. I'm actually trying to remember what DMT stands for off the top of my head as well. So do you know what DMT stands for off the top of your head?
I have given myself permission, like MDMA, 5-MeO, DMT, to not like those acronyms.
What was the other thing you said after MDMA?
5-MeO, DMT. Have you heard of
That's a
that?
new one. No. I have many
Yeah.
questions.
So it's I love these conversations. Yeah, it's just it's a different form of DMT. There's a few different forms of
Okay.
DMT.
It's all about the
Um,
potency. Is that how it works? Like,
no, source and brain function, they all have different. And this was part of my curiosity. Is like once I got into this work, I go, oh, there's more medicines. What do they do? How do they work? Why would you do one over the other? And I got
what
so
works for
curious
what
about that.
better?
Yeah.
Is
So
LSD on
there's
the cards as well?
totally. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Is there anything
Yeah.
else that we're missing that you have
Oh, there's
explored and
lots.
work with? Really? I'm
Yeah,
so
there's
out of my
lots.
depth in this area then. Wow. Okay. Okay. And is there
There's
like
lots.
blends, like fusions of these with each other? Is that a thing as well? Wow. Okay.
No, it is. Yeah, there's a lot of creativity that's happening in the psychedelic realm. For example, one of the biggest ones right now is psilocybin. And psilocybin, what they did is they took psychedelic mushrooms
Psilocybin
and psilocybin.
and mixed it
They
with
5-MeO mixed it with DMT. And it is the first time that an organic and a synthetic have been mixed together to create a whole new compound.
wow.
And it is beautiful. Yeah, there's so much.
Oh,
I will say there's
it's fascinating. I'm
I
like
know.
trying to imagine
It's
because
so
I
much
don't know
fun.
what the 5 DMT thing is, but I'm just like knowing what DMT is as a baseline and there's 5 something, like it's got to be an expansion for it to
Let
be at,
me
you know what I mean? Yeah, paint me a
yeah, let
picture.
me let me put it this way. There's in the realm of psychedelic medicines, most of them are organic. They're all organic based plants.
Mm.
There are two that come from animals. Only two. Everything else is plant based. One is a frog and one is a toad.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is the poison or the what do you call it? Like the stuff that they on their skin, right?
Yes.
Frog
Which
and toad. Okay.
I'm a practitioner of. But the toad is a South American, like um uh Arizona, New Mexico, Mexico. It's a toad. And they harvest the secretion from the glands in the cheeks and they dry it, and that's what you smoke. And
Mm,
that's the traditional DMT. It's called bufo.
okay.
So bufo is the organic. What they did is like in that organic, there's a lot of different molecular compounds beyond
Mm.
what is just the psychedelic compound. They identified and they isolated the actual psychedelic compound is the 5-MeO DMT molecular compound.
Oh.
So that they're able to reproduce in the labs. So
Oh.
when people work with that medicine, it is pure, it's just pure molecule. And there's an argument for organic, synthetic, and that's again a whole nother conversation, but it's a way of going, we can isolate these specific molecules that are medicine without going and harvesting frogs in South America.
There's an
The
argument for
frog,
why that would be better too, though. You know what I mean? As far as,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
There's debates about both. But when you hear 5-MeO DMT, that's the pure molecule of the organic compound,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. But because you've opened up the door, I'm very curious about, because obviously what you do and for you to have a business in this is something that is science backed. This isn't something, this is actually something that they were looking into. I believe it was the 60s or something. It was very early, especially with the
Very,
LSD and things like that.
yeah.
And they had significantly positive results. And then it was one of your presidents. Was it Nixon, Reagan? There was somebody like shut it down. And then it all of a sudden, just the media, the way that these compounds were portrayed, it was all this, I don't know, negative, sinful, satanic, like it was just this evil, like you shouldn't do this to your body. And this war on it started, and it suppressed the exploration that would have naturally occurred in just the basic evolution of science. And then you see with everybody's traumas, where we would have been had the research been able to develop naturally and not be shut down. So I gave a real basic synopsis, and you could tell there's holes. I haven't looked into it in a long time. Whereas this is your bread and butter. This is what you do. This is your jam. You're making sandwiches. Yeah. So can you share some of the science behind different things and all of this that supports what you do?
So, yeah, the war on drugs started with the Nixon administration. And what they were doing is they were combining LSD, psilocybin, like all of these medicinal compounds with heroin and cocaine. And those are very different. Those are very different. Like if we talk about mind altering substances, there's a very strong difference between something that's meant or it could be medicinal and helpful because it connects you to your higher self and to your truth, to something that disassociates and numbs and, is very harmful, which cocaine and heroin fall into that realm. The thing is that our pharmaceutical industry quickly realized that if people get better, they don't make money. And there was actually a Senate hearing not that long ago. There was sometime last year, there was a Senate hearing where one of our big corporations, right before the head of one corporation got assassination, if you know that story, but where they said that
that
they
one.
don't, we don't make money on healthy people. And this is our pharmaceutical industry in the United States is a multi-billion dollar industry. They don't want people to come off of their SSRIs, their antidepressants.
The whole medical system, the allopathic, it was based on all of this. Exactly.
So, I mean, that's our biggest...
He said the quiet part out loud in a hearing. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
In a Senate hearing,
right.
but that's what we're facing right now. I mean, there's so much scientific study where they can't backtrack it now. Like there is a tidal wave that's coming. It's already started. It's too big of a movement. So what they're trying to do now, at least in the States, is how do they regulate an organic compound? Because you can't patent an organic compound. So everyone right now is struggling for like how to control this. And it takes a lot to make me angry. I have a very, like my nervous system now that I've gone through my work, like I have a very steady, but like our medical environment here in the States is ridiculous.
And I imagine you would have had to jump through so many hoops to do what you do as well, get started up and running. How did that sort of all play out? Because I'm sure they're trying to put red tape up and stop you where possible and make it difficult for you.
Yeah, not in California. I'm pretty safe in California.
Yeah, you guys are a lot
Um,
different to the rest of the country. Yeah, a lot more free spirited.
I'm realizing just how much I didn't. It's been a
Ah,
shock. I think this past election was pretty shocking to see just how varied our country actually is.
mm.
And like the undertone of what we not we oh, this is gonna get me on another tangent. Anyway,
It's okay.
yeah, it's been shocking.
Mm.
It's been really shocking to see like what the heartbeat of our country is actually um
I'd say it's an irregular
valuing.
heartbeat because it's not all beating as one, unfortunately. But then again,
I
neither is most countries. It's just when push comes to shove, you actually see it for the first time. But I'm curious to know because he's very, what's the word? Unconventional. It's probably a nice way to say it. But is he more open to these things? And no, no.
God no.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
No, God
I'm
no.
surprised.
No,
Okay.
no. We're going back, we're headed back to, the 1920s.
How's that
Um
affected your business side of things? Are there new things coming into? Oh, really?
well, yes and no. I
Okay.
again, so the state of California, so Colorado and Oregon, so two of our states have legalized psilocybin. So it's again this tidal wave, it's already starting to come. And the unique thing about the states is that like each state has their own ruling factors. There's the federal, but then there's the state level. And
Mm,
on the state level, each state has their own independence to legalize what they feel is important. And so two of the states, Oregon and Colorado, have already legalized therapeutic uses of psilocybin and MDMA. California is right behind it. There's just some, political play that's happening. But in the state of California, um, they are not putting any time or effort or funding into pursuing anyone who is doing psychedelic therapy.
as in
If they
research, or do you
no,
mean?
meaning like I'm pretty safe to practice here because they're not gonna pursue me here in
Okay.
California. Like,
Oh, okay.
the federal agencies aren't going to spend time and money, especially because the medicines that I work with and the dosage is so low. If they
Mm,
do, they're going to go to the macro, to the growers, the people that are doing like more of a bigger scale
the big
operation
fish.
than
Yeah.
the big fish, rather than, me and my work and what I'm doing. It's small potatoes. They're not going to waste resources. And so I have a couple people. So I have my pulse on the
You have
legal
your
realm.
finger on the pulse with, yeah,
I
well, you
have my
need to
finger on
be.
the
You've got
pulse.
to be on top. Yeah. On top of it
So
all. Yeah.
there's a friend of mine started a legal firm to
Mm.
write the law around psychedelic therapy because it doesn't exist. And so
Oh,
so her firm and a couple of partner firms are working with state legislators to write the law again because it doesn't. I mean, everyone's figuring it out because it doesn't exist yet. And so
mm.
based on her recommendation and what's happening, especially in the state of California, like I'm pretty safe to work here. There's no immediate threat. Even though what I'm doing is not legal, but there's no gray around it. It's not
There's no
legal.
area. Yeah. It's
There's no
not legal, but
gray.
it's not illegal. It's just happening kind of
It's
thing.
not, yeah, yeah. But it's
I'm,
safe here. But if I were in other parts of the United States, that would be very different. Like if I
oh,
were in
yeah.
the South, it would be a totally different game. But where I am now, it's I
So
can pioneer what I'm doing and
what
be okay.
what I'm curious, is there a physical place that you um that Trilome sits in and people come there? Is it something you do out in nature or like, because there's a lot of, you work with a lot of different um I don't want to say substances because then that goes, you know what I mean? People have their own beliefs about what that word means. Um, but the compounds, the
Yeah.
psychoactive ingredients, I don't know how to word this.
No, you
But
did.
yeah, the things that you work with and the people that you work with, do you do individual work? Do you do group work? Is it in a more centralized place, or is it somewhere, because are you in California now? Or, yeah?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there's a lot of very popular spiritual areas close by to you that are notorious
Yes.
for these kinds of things. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
I've gone
Yeah.
as good as I can with that question, but open-ended. All right, fill in the gaps, color me in.
You asked it perfectly. No, Trilome is a very individual experience, so it's one-on-one.
Yep.
Um, so it's myself and my client, and I do have an office that they come to. I can also go to their home. It just kind of depends. Like we can work on, which scenario works best. But a Trium session is the integration of these psychedelic medicines with hands-on bodywork. And I'm so passionate about this one because I've had my own physical boundaries crossed, and touching someone when they're altered is very tricky.
Okay.
Very, very tricky because a lot of people that have their boundaries crossed, like if there's sexual abuse that has
Mm,
happened, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it's either they were altered or their abuser was altered or they were both altered. So to enter into that space again, but with the right foundation and with the right support and safety measures, it can be really beautiful because we were talking about that frontal lobe, right? Like this is
mm.
where like we hold a lot of those belief systems. I can't be safe. I um, I people just use me. I'm not worth anything.
It's me against the
This deep,
world. I'm all alone. Yeah.
mhm,
Nobody understands me.
yeah,
Yeah.
all of that. Partner that with your autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system runs your fight or flight, but then also your
Mm,
reflexes. So your reflexes happen without logic or thought. So if you sense out of the corner of your eye that something's flying at you, you're just gonna
mm, mm.
flinch and move. You didn't sit there and go cognitively, let me
What
be
is that?
strategic
What could
about
it
how I
be?
move.
What's the trajectory and the velocity? Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah.
My favorite is like when you're slipping. So like if you're slipping and your arms go like in crazy directions, like it's my favorite. Like how did my body know which like crazy configuration to go to keep my balance?
Mm,
It's not part of the cognitive response.
mm,
Um, so when we're out in life and there's a threat or a conflict, we reflexively protect ourselves. So we contract, we get ready
mm,
to fight, flight, or run. And then we get through life and we relax, but maybe not all the way. And then life happens. And then we get through it, and then life happens, and then life happens, and then life happens, and then life happens. And before we know it, we have all this extra tension in our body that we're not cognitively aware of, right? It's not part of
mm,
our brain function. So it takes external stimulation to go, hey, there's tension here. Oh, right. Okay. I'm good. I can release and let go. So the trailing session is very much all of that extra tension and stress that you're holding in your body is a protective mechanism that's there for a reason because something happened or life happened. That's not wrong, but there's patterns that are stuck.
mm,
And it's really hard to get into what you're assuming with an automatic pattern if this is still running the show.
mm,
And so I use a little bit of psychedelics. It's called a threshold dose. Like it's enough for you to feel it, but not enough to disassociate because I want you to be present with your physical body. I don't want you to go,
okay. You're not having your own experience and then you're in the midst of that. It's actually you two together and you're not fully absent, let's just say, having your own experience. Okay. Now it
no,
makes
because
sense why the
then,
touching works. Yeah.
no, because then the physical touch is inappropriate. Like if you're not present with me, um, then that's a boundary crossing. So
Not
a
to mention
trial
what that would
session.
do to somebody in that, yeah, whatever they're experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm super sensitive to that because I've had that experience. And so I'm very like the way
Okay.
that I've developed, this method is very cognizant and careful around that. But what we do is we slowly go through the body. So like if there's a bunch of tension in my shoulder, we just pause. And with the medicine, like I have the client go into, okay, what is the protective pattern? How did it get there? What is it about? What does it need for healing and release? They do that work internally with the medicine. And as they start to
Mm.
resolve it, then the physical tissue will start to shift.
Like
And so
melts
then
away
I
the tension
just,
in the fascia. Yeah. Yeah.
yep. So then the hands-on touch is just to really work it fully out of the system because there's the physical, the emotional, the energetic, the intellectual and spiritual bodies. And so working with medicine and hands-on is just like we get all five at the same time, but we work with all five, if that makes sense, to
Yeah.
just resolve like everything that we hold. And we hold a lot of things for other people. There's our
Mm.
partners and our friends and our families and epigenetics. One of
Mm.
my other like favorite conversations, it's like we hold things for the people. We're not cognitively doing it. So I can't just go to a meditation or to a yoga class and release it, because of this subperceptual autonomic nervous system response.
What did you just call me? Subperceptual. What?
So I'll have to go back and see like what I actually just said. A lot of what we hold, right? It's a subperceptual autonomic nervous system response.
Okay.
Subperceptual meaning it's without logic or thought.
It's like our subconscious is perceiving things based on our past, and your nervous system is responding like it did in the past for protection, but over
Yes.
things that are kind of unrelated, but somewhat related because part of your consciousness is like, hey, I recognize that. But then you're just, if it's a tension area that you have, this is why they say a lot of women hold extreme amounts of tension in their hip, and that's connected to emotion. Like now you're talking about the emotional and spiritual body. There's a lot of people who say, intellectualizing what they've gone through, that they're fine, they've healed, but in their body, chronic pain and autoimmune issues,
Yeah.
all of that manifests
Yeah.
because it hasn't been able to be expressed. And part of that expression is it's perspective in the experience, but it's the lens that you relive. For example, you're not
Yeah.
like re-traumatizing yourself, which is what traditional therapy
Right.
can do, and what people get stuck in talk therapy for years and not really heal
Yeah.
anything. They're just
Right.
re-traumatizing. So I think
Yeah.
I can it makes sense to me that what you could do in a session with you, especially because I have never heard of it in this way. So I'm very grateful that I was able to speak to you, because it's not just somebody like, yeah, I have a shaman, then I get people and they go have their own experience and they just pay me and I get them the person, the place and the stuff. And then they just go and do, and we don't talk and nothing happens. And they just come back every couple of, you know what I mean? You've actually got a
Yeah.
process that you go through. But what makes me curious, because you might get, especially being in America, a lot more veterans and things like that who have very specific needs. And it's not a blanket, all right, this psychedelic works for everyone's situation. So how do you determine what do you find is effective for what, if that makes sense?
No, makes total sense. And that's a large part of my curiosity. And that's actually how I got my start, is because I was curious about that.
Mm.
Like once I got into the jungle, because I knew at that point what ayahuasca could do. And then I went into the jungle and I go, wait, there's other medicines? Wait, what do you do? What do you do? And a lot of it has to do with just brain function. So you brought up the veterans. In
Mm.
that case, the empathogens or MDMA are brilliant, brilliant because of how the brain function works. So the amygdala part of the brain back here, it's very different than the logic. The
Mm.
amygdala is the fight or flight. That's our instinct. That's what kicks into gear, like when we need to fight for survival. When that kicks in, it overtakes the logic because it's
Mm.
just instinct. Just go, do, react, which is why people, have different responses depending on their genes. They fight, they they freeze, they, whatever the response is, which is why people don't know what to say. They don't know where to go. They go up the stairs instead of out the front door. It's not logical. So take a veteran, for example. Um, so for us, July 4th is our Independence Day. There's fireworks all day long. Obviously, fireworks mimic bombs and explosions. It's very traumatic for anyone that's been in a war zone.
Hmm.
Now, logically, they know July 4th, they're
It's
not in war.
fireworks. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're triggered, you're not thinking logically. You're going into your perceived memory, your perceived threat. So MDMA reverses that process in the brain. So MDMA actually works on the amygdala. It slows the amygdala down, not the frontal lobe.
Okay.
So you can go back into, a triggered, like a really, like a past trauma. And instead of being emotionally triggered, now you're thinking logically, oh, I can see how I was safe. Oh, I can see how I'm not in Iraq anymore. Oh, I can talk to my partner, which is why it's brilliant for partner work. Because
Mm.
initially, like if you get triggered by each other, like you go into a defensive, what? You always say that. How do you, but if you're
Mm.
not triggered, if you don't have that survival instinct, if that's toned down, then logically you're listening to your partner going, oh, I can see how you thought that's what I meant.
Mm.
Oh, I can see how that behavior would mean something different to you. And I didn't understand that before. Like that's where that therapy happens. It's because it's just from toning down the emotional trigger that overtakes logic. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm thinking also, a lot of the veterans that I've met and spoken to that suffer with PTSD, some of those side effects, we'll call it, or consequences, are things that aren't necessarily being triggered by external experiences, but nightmares is one of the biggest ones, for a lot of veterans. And this is where a lot of substance abuse comes into play, because anything they can
Sure.
get to numb themselves, not remember, um, and a lot of them have
And
trouble sleeping altogether because they fear it, because they can't control what they see, experience, feel, wake up, can't go back to sleep. It's on their mind all day, and then they're extra prone to being triggered because it's sort of front of
yeah.
mind. So I can understand how doing something like MDMA can help with the waking stuff, but obviously the research actually suggests that it helps with relieving the symptoms altogether, right?
Yeah, because our psyches are designed to keep us functional and safe.
Mm.
And, when we are asleep, when we're awake, we have more cognitive control. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. I'm going to suppress, not thinking about it. I'm going to distract by, the stimulus around me. When we're
Yeah.
sleeping, we don't have that distraction necessarily. And so a lot of times, like our psyche needs to process some really intense life experiences. And so that tends to happen in our sleep state. And either
Mm.
it's an actual life memory or it's not, and this is the same instance with processing, like when you're doing, psychedelic medicines. Let's say you take a lot of mushrooms, magic mushrooms. Either you're processing an actual life experience or you're not, it's something else. It's a hallucination. And I don't mean like pink elephants.
Okay.
It's just a perceived environment. It's just your psyche way of like trying to process through things.
Mm.
Um, and our psyche will process through pictures. So if we're processing suppressed emotion, so if there's fear or anger or regret or uncertainty or whatever it is, it's going to come out like your brain's going to create a picture or a story that makes the emotion make sense.
Yeah, to
So if
express it in a
I'm
way that you'll understand. Yeah.
so if I'm
Yeah.
frustrated, then I'm going to dream about like opening a door and I can't. Um, or if I'm scared, then I am, you know, the fire is at my back door, or I'm being chased by a lion, or whatever it may be.
Mm.
So when you're able to get to a place where you can process either the emotion or the actual life experience in a way that is safe, where you have tools to handle it and you have resources to help you with whatever it may be, that's where the deeper alchemy of the processing and the healing work goes of our life experiences, especially trauma and
Mm.
PTSD. So whether we're taking these medicines in a microdose or a macrodose, whether we're awake or asleep, our psyche is still kind of processing everything the same kind of a way.
I've got to be honest, though. We have barely scratched the surface, right? Like, I feel like I've only got the appetizer, whereas I want the full degustation. I'm so gonna have to have you back, Lisa, because yeah,
Let's do part 2, 3, 4, and 5. I love
absolutely.
I love these conversations so much. I love them.
Oh, well, standard for what you do.
I
You should love them.
Yeah, I geek out on it.
Well, to wrap up, I'd love to hear a transformation um, that has been experienced due to this that you're aware of or that you help facilitate, just so people can really understand the magnitude of events that can be worked through with such
Hmm.
ease, simplicity, and support, basically.
Yeah, thankfully I have a plethora of stories that I can share. Let me see if I can relate it to some specific things that we've said.
You don't have to, can be anything. Secret category C is fine.
Well, so one example, there's a young woman that came to me with known trauma. I mean, she knew it wasn't a suppressed trauma. She knew exactly what had happened in her younger childhood years, but just wasn't given the time or space or tool set to be able to process it. And so she develops the neurological disorder where she pulls her hair out.
Oh, yeah.
Trichnoculamia, I'm going to butcher it, so maybe you can edit that part out. But
Or I'll leave it in there just for
OCD.
fun.
But
Yeah.
the OCD, like where
Yeah.
you pull the
I've
hair
spoken
out.
to people who do that, the follicles and all. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And she went into a Trilome session and she just realized that she just never learned the tools to how to process her, her trauma or her energy. And so because she couldn't express it, because she couldn't express when she was younger, the only way to like discharge the energy was by pulling the hair out.
Mm.
Um, so she was able to go in and identify that that was the root cause because she didn't make that connection before.
Mm.
Um, and then by developing other tools, like in her sovereign authority, going, oh, I have other ways now where I can process my emotions. Like that's just a strategy.
Mm.
So if I can switch my strategy, I can heal it. And she's gone through a lot of life, especially here in Los Angeles. There's a lot of trauma that's happened in the last few months, and it still hasn't come back. There is another woman who, on and off, has been just tortured with nightmares. Like she just can't sleep.
Mm.
Every time she goes to sleep, she's just woken up with night terrors. Not all the time, but most of the time. And in the Trilome session, just given the time of space, she goes, oh, she had an experience when she was a child where someone entered her room when she was young. And so she learned that being asleep is not safe. And so
Yep.
the only way
Yep.
that her psyche could keep her safe was by keeping her awake.
Mm.
And the only way it could keep her awake was through night terrors.
Yeah. Keep jolting her awake and being alert instantly when you're awake. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a gentleman who came who's been in therapy for 40 years, like psychotherapy for 40 years, that has
It's a lot of
lower.
money.
I know,
A
I
lot of
know,
money.
I
Wow.
know. But
Okay. Yeah.
you're just like when you need help, you
This is
need
what
help, but like
the system puts you through. Mm.
lower back pain. And I mean, he's had all of the shots, he's had all of the therapy, all of the acupuncture, all of the chiropractic adjustments, and he's had everything. And he was about to get a back fusion. And he came into the session with me and realized he remembered that he was an only child and grew up in the Midwest, which is an ice hockey um, sport for us here in the States. And ice hockey is, there's a lot of equipment and there's a lot of expenses. Like it's a pretty expensive sport. I mean, you can't just pick up a ball and go in a field. I mean, because there's, you know, you have the skates and the pads and everything.
Mm.
And he was pretty good. So he was on traveling teams and whatnot. And there was one afternoon when his dad told him, um, I forget the exact words, but basically his dad told him that like had he and his mom not had him, they would have been a lot more better off financially. And, you know, that lower back, you know, is the safety foundation, it's the first, second chakra, you know, assimilation to it. And so he's held the financial responsibility of his family
Yeah.
ever since he was 15 years old, even though that's not the case. You know, it was just
Just the weight of that
unhealthy.
saying, like, yeah, you can
Yeah, of his
imagine what
dad
that's done.
going, yeah, we're struggling because of you. And like, we would be
Mm.
better off had we not had you. Like, can you imagine carrying that while you're, you know, but that's a deep seated subconscious. Like, he didn't remember that. And in his 40 years of therapy, that never came up. Um, but like when you're tapping into the chronic pain without, you know, with a little bit of help, you know, to get into the subconscious, the medicine's like, yeah, your body is holding on to this memory. Um, Another example, and then I'll close it. I
What
think
I'm
one of
curious about as well is who had what for what. You know what I mean?
who had what for what.
Like, with the stories that you've shared, what were the medicines that they had, or is it the same for everybody?
Oh, it's yeah. I mean, I can facilitate a few different medicines, but Trilome specifically is mushroom.
Okay, so
Um,
psilocybin.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
psilocybin. Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
there's
And tell me the
other.
last story.
Yeah, I mean, there's other. I'll facilitate other medicines for other reasons, but like like if I'm putting my hands on someone, it's psilocybin. I never do MDMA. We have a lot of conversations to have, Allie.
Oh yeah,
That's it.
most definitely.
Yeah, there's reasons. Like I have very specific
Especially
reasons
with MDMA. Yeah.
as to like what I do and like what's a Trilum specific and what's not.
Okay.
But there was a woman who's a psychotherapist herself, actually. So
Mm.
she herself is a therapist and she practices yoga. And she initially came to me just for body work because she was having shoulder pain and hip pain. And it was, you know, impacting her practice. And, you know, it just wasn't comfortable. After a while, because we were doing a bunch of body work, it would help for a minute and then it would always come back. And
Mm.
so eventually she agreed to do a Trilome session. And in the Trilome session, this gets me every time. Her left shoulder, once we got into her left shoulder, she had the memory of she had an 8-month-old daughter who, crazy circumstances, suddenly passed away. Just like one of those freak
Mm.
things, and no one could have foreseen, just this, you know, crazy medical condition that, you know, went undetected. And within 24 hours, her 8-month-old passed, and she was holding her in her left arm.
Oh wow.
And the tension was, you know, even though this was 10 years later, you know, she would still, like, that was her way of holding on to her daughter.
And the grief. Yeah. 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 Oh
And
wow.
so we worked with, you know, there's other ways to hold on to her memory, and there's other ways to hold on, you know, and to remember her, but you don't have to physically
Mm.
hold it, you know. And eventually she got to the point where she was able to kind of imagine and physiologically kind of let her go.
Mm.
Um, Not forever, but just, you know, putting up an altar, you know, different things. And then the
Mm.
hip pain, she related to her grandmother's experience. She was holding ancestral trauma. from her grandmother. And she was able to kind of make those connections and do the resolution within the medicine and, within her spirit. And like just through us working together, she was able to let it go. And her pain has never come back.
Wow, that is powerful and very beautiful, really. Oh, wow. It's amazing that you get to do this kind of work with people, and then people will understand the psychosomatics, the connection with the mind and the body and the manifestation. Wow. Honestly, it's been so great to have you. So great to meet you. I cannot wait to do this again. Hey.
Anytime, anytime. Yeah, thank you. As I said, I love these conversations. Obviously, I get very passionate about it. And thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity, and what a delight. It's nice to finally meet you.
You too. So thanks for being here with us for this ep. New ones will come out to you every other Thursday. If you'd like to get in touch with Lisa, or if you're in the area and you'd like to book a Trilome session, all the links will be included in the show notes. Don't forget to follow her or I on socials, and the websites will also be there too. Well, you take it easy, beautiful people. You'll hear from me soon.